Okay, so today we are going to be talking about blended learning. And with everything that's been happening in the world and last spring and now this fall, this is really a hot topic in education. And hopefully we'll give you some good information about it and some suggestions if this is how you would like to start teaching this fall. So first is, what is blended learning? Blended learning is actually a combination of face-to-face teaching and online instruction. It is not a completely online course, and it's also not just meaning we're one-to-one. So blended learning is really that combination of in-person teaching and virtual teaching. So these are some topics in education, some hot key phrases. And the first one is blended learning. So again, we talked about that. But then you also might hear the concept flipped classroom. And this is a type of blended learning environment. And what you do in a flipped classroom is you have students watch and learn the material at home, and then they ask questions about what they've learned at school where you're able to collaborate. So this would be, again, you record your lessons ahead of time, and then you are able to have the students either watch it as homework, or that's the first thing you do in the morning. They watch that lesson, and then you're able to ask questions and collaborate after. Another one is our asynchronous. That is a phrase that is used when you are learning the exact same material, but at different times, and then also potentially different locations. So if you do record a video of yourself, are students watching that video all at the same time? Or are they watching it at different times throughout the day? Whatever works best for them. You know, if you have a student who's learning at home because they choose to be virtual this fall, they might be watching your instructional video at 10 when others are watching it at 8. And that's what we mean when we're talking about asynchronous. And then the last one is synchronous learning, which again would be learning all at the same time. So when we're in the classroom, we are doing synchronous learning because we are obviously instructing our class. But you can do synchronous learning virtually as well, right? So if you're at the middle school or high school level and you have your students who are in the classroom with you and you might be teaching them, and then also having a Google Meet going on at the exact same time so that students at home can virtually watch what you are doing in front of your students, that would be synchronous learning. So what are some benefits of blended learning? When we're talking about blended learning, again, this is where that you have the ability to have students self-pace. This would allow high-achieving students to move on without having to wait. And then students who maybe need more time to learn the material, they are not forced to move forward at a pace that is not appropriate for their learning. It also helps students who are out of class stay on track. So for whatever reason, whether it's due to truancy or illness, you know, we're talking about this fall, if they have to be quarantined, by having a blended learning model, you are allowing students to have access to your instruction without having to actually be in the classroom. Again, third benefit would be that they have access to your instruction as many times as needed. So instead of reteaching the lesson 3 times, they can rewatch the video. And then it's also from any location. Again, for those students who might be home for any reason, they'll have access to your instruction. And the last thing is, it is perfect for our fluctuating school year. I'm not sure what you guys think, but you know, we might have to go from our hybrid model into maybe completely virtual. And if you have students set up and ready to go using this type of model of learning, that transition will be very easy because they already know the expectations. They've been doing it with you in the classroom, and then they can transition smoothly if we have to go completely virtual. So again, some components of blended learning. There is that face-to-face component, so that's really important for education. We know that conversation, collaboration, either small group instruction or reteaching. And then there's also the virtual component, which is, again, self-paced, where students can do some independent practice, and there's also student choice in there. So those are two of the main components. And again, the great thing about blended learning is even though there's that face-to-face component, if we do happen to be completely virtual at some point, that face-to-face component could be a Google Meet, just like we're doing right now. So it doesn't actually mean face-to-face in the same vicinity. It could be face-to-face conversations that you're hosting virtually. So when we're talking about blended learning, let's talk about some best practices. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you're giving clear guidelines and pacing. So a blended learning environment, again, I've mentioned how that there's that ability for students to go farther if needed, or maybe review a little bit longer. So when you're setting up a blended learning classroom, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to plan a week's worth of material or more at a time. And this allows students that are, again, maybe high flyers to get through potentially 2 lessons per day, or 2 topics that you want to cover per day. And then those students who are need additional review might do 1 lesson every 2 days or something like that. But you do want to make sure that if you're using a blended model, you are giving them clear guidelines. So if you are planning for a week's worth of instruction at one point, you want to make sure that you say, these are all the things everybody in the class must do by the end of the week. Then you might have some additional activities that are may-dos for those, again, high flyers, so that they have the ability to extend their learning even farther. But you do want to make sure that those expectations are very clear. This, again, allows for some flexibility, whether they are in person or at home. And there's a lot of ways you can organize this, but for younger kids, couple days at a time or weekly at a time are ideal. If you have older students, maybe at the high school level, you might plan for 2 weeks at a time and say, these are the items you need to get completed within 2 weeks, and you use your time wisely. Again, more best practices. You want to provide materials for all of your students. It's great differentiation. So again, considering having those must-dos, what are activities or lessons you must get through today or this week or during this unit. And then having those extension activities, those may-dos are great. The other thing you're going to want to make sure you have is you're going to want to use one platform to organize all of your information for students. So if you are using Seesaw, Google Classroom, or PowerSchool, those are all great learning management systems. But pick one and stick with it so that your students aren't wondering, where am I going to find today's assignments and how am I going to get there? Another thing is, because you are doing this blended model, you are going to have to record some video lessons, or you might choose to record some video lessons. And again, this is great because students can re-watch the lessons as needed. You don't have to restate your learning objectives. And then you're also going to want to make sure that you are continually assessing your students and checking in. So again, pre and post assessments are great. Exit tickets are fabulous. So that way, if they watch the video and they complete an exit ticket but completely miss the mark, you know that there might be some small group reteaching that needs to be done, or you might suggest that they watch the video again. And again, you want to make sure that you're regularly checking in with your students. Because it is more of a self-paced structure of learning, you want to make sure that they are staying on track so that they are going to be successful and complete all of their work that you are expecting them to do. So a couple additional things to consider when you're doing a blended learning model. One of the main things is thinking about power standards. And when we're talking about that, it's hard to get through all of our curriculum when we're in person. But with a fluctuating school year like we have in the fall, it's going to be incredibly important to pick those power standards, those really important standards that you want your students to learn. And those are going to be your must-dos. Those are going to be the things that you want to make sure that they understand before moving on. And then other standards could potentially be those may-dos or those enrichment. The other thing you want to make sure is, I know I said plan for a week of instruction or maybe 2 weeks of instruction at a time, but make sure that you are using best practices in education and that maybe you don't record every video for your unit in one sitting because things might have to be adjusted, right? You want to fit the needs of your students. You want to know, what reteaching might need to be done, and maybe it's reteaching for the entire class. So you might have to record an additional video or do some actual reteaching. So make sure that it's timely. Make sure that you're thinking about your students, not, these are all the videos and we're done. The last thing is you want to make sure that you're keeping your students engaged. And you can keep them engaged by using other technology platforms in tandem with this blended learning. Whether your students are in person or virtual, you can have these additional tools at your disposal to use, and we'll talk about a couple of those in a little bit. Okay, so before we talk about how this is going to look in your classroom, whether you're elementary or secondary, this is just a quick video or a quick slide on the perfect video. So that's something that is probably going to be new to a lot of teachers, is maybe recording themselves versus doing a live Google Meet or a live session in front of students in the classroom. And when we're talking about those tips for that perfect video, you're going to want to think about the resources that you have. So for example, if you need to show them something on a device, on a computer, you're going to want to use a screen recording software like Loom. We suggest Loom for our department because it is free for all educators as long as you have a verified school account. Screencastify is also an option that's very popular, but you are limited unless you pay for it. So those are some options for you. If you are doing something where you are sharing your screen and then recording, maybe using a Google Slide, make sure that they're not text heavy and that they're clean and engaging. And there's a lot of great resources of templates, similar to this template that I'm using today, where you are able to then have an engaging or pretty looking slides show that you can share with your students. You also want to make sure that you keep your instruction short. Your videos should be 6 minutes or less. And that is, you might need to have more than one video, but that's okay. Attention span is incredibly important. You guys can probably attest to the attention span of students in the classroom when you're physically in front of them. But just remember that when they're on a device and there's that screen in between you guys, their attention span is probably going to be a little bit less. So keep your videos short. Really think about that mini lesson idea of how you can teach your students effectively. Also, when you are recording your videos, make sure to keep out specifics. So for example, dates or names. This would be so that you can reuse the videos in future years. So you're putting all this work in to record a video on how to teach double-digit multiplication for your students. And if you're using an example of a story that a student shared in your class, that's a great way to connect with your students. But then that video becomes obsolete for future years. So consider that when you're recording your videos as well. And then the last thing is, and I know this might be hard, but it's really important for your students to see you. There are a lot of great videos out there on YouTube, on Khan Academy, that are teaching them how to do these skills. But if you can and if you have time, you should be recording your own video lessons, instructing them, because you are the expert and they want to hear it from you. They don't want to hear it from a random person they don't know. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a second and see if we have any questions that I can quickly answer. So Jenny or Sarah, if there's anything in the chat that you would like me to address before we talk about some practical applications for the fall.
There aren't any questions in regards to the chat, but if anybody wants to unmute themselves, feel free to do so now.
Okay, perfect. So how might this look in the fall? So this is a sample plan for the elementary, right? So when we're talking about the hybrid model at the elementary, all students are going to be there all day. There might be a percentage of your students who are choosing to be virtually. So this could be a way to engage them. But you'll notice that in our hybrid model, you can still record the lessons and have the students watch them on their one-to-one device. All students, K-12, have their own device, so they could put their headphones in, listen to the lesson, while you as a teacher are either running small groups or helping students who are maybe absent or getting other projects accomplished. And then the student work side would be having students create a choice board or an activity, or having multiple things for them to accomplish that day based on the lesson that you had them watch. You can also, again, have conversations after, if you're in the classroom and you have your students watch the video and then they do an exit ticket, you can have those conversations with the students. But it's just a way to make sure that they are getting used to this, because if we do have to go 100% virtual, you'll notice that the structure is exactly the same, right? You can have the students watch a lesson and then follow up with the teacher via Google Meet virtually. The student work stays exactly the same. They're going to have some activities to choose from, or a certain worksheet that you want them to complete. And then you'll have that same structure so that they are ready to go regardless of what mode we're in. When we're talking about the secondary model, it looks a little bit different because we do have students who are going to be in the buildings, but then only in the buildings 2 days a week, and then learning virtually those other days. So this would be this hybrid model, and as a teacher, these are some things that you can do. So your lessons can be pre-recorded. This is also great because if you are a middle school or high school teacher and you are teaching to a group of 15 students who are in your class, and you also have a group of 15 students who are on a Google Meet, that classroom management could be very difficult, right? You have to not only manage the students who are in front of you, but also the students who are on the Google Meet. So if you have these pre-recorded lessons already done, you don't have to worry about that instructional classroom management piece. So you pre-record your lessons, you share them out to the kids who are currently in your classroom, you also share it out to the students who are learning virtually, and then you have the ability to hold small groups. You can have face-to-face small groups for the students who are in the building with you. You could do small groups for the students who are on a Google Meet, or even a combination. How nice would it be for students who are in that 15-person cohort to be able to talk to students who are also learning at home? Maybe it's a good friend of theirs that they are on opposite days. So consider that as well when you are grouping your students. So then also the instructional period, you might want to have discussion and collaboration, again, talking about the video lessons that they watched, again, either as homework the night before or right away when they come in class. You can address those misconceptions, again, as a whole group of students who are live, or a combination of Google Meets, or maybe it's just going to be the people who are virtual that you are talking with. And then the assignments are going to obviously be supporting the students, and you as a teacher have time then to walk around, to float, to help those students with their assignments that they need to complete, because you are not spending 10 minutes or however long it is up there instructing your students. On the student side of it then, you'll notice that your students that are at school and your students who are at home are doing the exact same thing, which is great. It's equitable for all your students regardless of where they are. So those students who choose to be virtual 100% of the time are still getting instruction from you versus an online learning platform. So again, you have your students watch your lessons and follow up with you. If you're at school, maybe that's in person, or if they're at home, it's going to be during Google Meet. Again, your assignments are going to be turned in using one learning management system, whether that's PowerSchool or Google Classroom, and you are able to then have discussions, again, whether it's in person or on a Google Meet or a combination of that. And it's, again, very, very equitable for all of your students. So when we're talking about organizing our weeks, right, the best way is to be using some type of template that you have pre-created. There are a lot of templates out there that you can use. This is just one example, and I do have more examples linked, but you'll notice if you're planning your week, you then have the ability to send this out to your students on Monday. Again, whether they're virtual or they're in person, they have a plan. So you'll notice this is using slides linking, and if I click on Monday and I click on activity 1, it takes me to that slide where I can have my video lesson embedded. I can have the activity I want them to complete. Again, those high flyers, those students who maybe accomplish this very quickly, can click on the home and they can go to activity 2. They can do all of the activities needed. And if, they accomplish the first 2 activities, those are your must-dos, they can do some of those extension activities, which is potentially a may-do. So again, this is self-guided for the students, but then you as a teacher can float and answer questions and really address the needs of all of your students. So again, that's just one example, and I do have more linked. And again, it can be an entire week's worth. It could be a unit's worth. That's totally up to you. So let me get through some of these slides real quick, so we don't need to see all of them. Okay, so when we're talking about additional technology resources that can help you with this, there are a lot out there, and these are just some that we would suggest. So the first one, again, is if you're going to be recording videos, we highly recommend using Loom. Loom is screen recording, but you can also set it up so that it just records your camera. You don't have to record what's on your device at all. So if you are teaching a lesson and maybe you want to have a board behind you, you can do that. You can have your workstation set up and record a lesson that way. The other great thing about Loom is you have the ability to edit your videos, download your videos so that you could, again, embed them in a Google slide, or also just share the videos out via link. It's very, very easy. Also make sure you're using your tools that you have available to you. If you have a document camera or an Osmo, because you're at the elementary level, you can use that to record, and this is great for those who want to teach handwriting or maybe math problems and they don't want to have to annotate on a screen. You could use those features, plug it into your computer, still record everything, but you could show them how to do a math problem. Another great technology resource is Edpuzzle. This allows you to take videos, either videos you recorded or videos that you find online, and insert questions throughout. It also allows you to see how much of the video the students have watched. So, if they start watching it and they watch like 1 minute of your lesson and then say, I'm done, on Edpuzzle, you can actually see that. You can see exactly where they stopped. And there is going to be a Techno Tuesday session on Edpuzzle still coming up this summer. So if you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend that you join us there. Another great platform is Insert Learning. This allows you to, again, embed questions on a website or article. We also recommend Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a great resource so that students can record themselves. Very, very easy to use. We had a Techno Tuesday on it last week or 2 weeks ago, so the recording is available if you want to learn more about Flipgrid, but very easy, I would say at all grade levels. We also have Parlay, which is a discussion board, so if you want to have those discussions with students who are virtually and in the classroom, that's a great thing. I would highly recommend you check out Parlay. And then also Padlet is a great brainstorming board. When I send you out this presentation, there are links on the titles that will take you directly to those sites, just so you're aware. Some additional ones, Blogger, again, is a great resource that students could create their own blog if you're looking for another way to assess their learning. or create some type of project. Pear Deck is great for interactive Google Slides. So if you are doing a lot of your lessons using Google Slides and walking them through your content that way, definitely check out Pear Deck because you can add questions in there. And I will say that Pear Deck does work in a completely virtual environment as well, right? So they don't have to be in your classroom following along. They could be at home following along and doing it synchronously that way. Also, if you want to consider gamifying your lessons, check out Quizzes and Kahoot. We did have a Quizzes Techno Tuesday where you could learn more about that as well. So again, these are just ways to make sure that you are keeping your lessons engaging or switching up the activities that you're going to have students do. Again, when I share this out, here are just some templates of choice boards or how you would structure a week if you're looking to do something like that. There's a bunch of them here. They're all linked. If you're looking for fun backgrounds for a Google Slides or more additional templates, these are our 3 go-tos. You can click here in Slides Mania, Slides Carnival, or Slides Go. They are completely free. You can download the template and use them. Also, and I saw Sarah put this in the chat, we do have our instructional technology website. So I highly recommend you check that out. There's a lot of trainings that we've already done. But in addition, there's trainings for your students as well. So if your students are new to Google Classroom, you can send them to that website or share that video with them, and they will learn a little bit of the ins and outs about Google Classroom or how to submit an assignment, something that might be difficult for them if they're brand new. If there's something on the website that you want to see, please reach out to one of the technology coaches and we'd be happy to record additional videos or put together a help sheet. Just reach out to us and be like, this would really help my students. Let us know. And then lastly, I just want to share that if you are really interested in this blended learning model, I condensed it down to 30 minutes to try to make it work today. But there are 2 really great free resources. The first one is this hybrid teaching book. Again, it's completely free, but she walks you through some great strategies. And then the second one is this Modern Classrooms, and it's actually a course that you can walk through on your device. Again, completely free, but it talks a lot about how blended learning looks in different situations and gives you some really great examples. Okay, so that is all I have for you, and we're 2 minutes early. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to your technology coaches. If you start planning and you're like, I need some help with this, please let us know. Or you could email our InTech email address as well, and someone will get back to you. Are there any questions that I can help answer live right now? Okay, so I saw one come in on the chat. Let me just open up the chat real quick.
I'll read it to you, Julia. Are we allowed to model reading strategies while doing a read aloud and record it on Loom without contacting the publisher of the text to ask permission?
That's a great question. We had a lot of those questions come up in the spring as well. As long as you're so there's a couple things, right? If it's not the entire text, it shouldn't matter. The other thing is if you're not posting it publicly, if it's just for classroom use, very similar to other, you're not making copies of the books and sending them out to students. So I believe that would be okay. Jenny and Sarah, please hop in if you disagree, because that's kind of what we've been telling teachers, that you're just sharing it with your students, you're not posting it publicly. You should be fine to be able to read a book and do some teaching strategies with that.
Yeah, the other thing with that too, Kara, is you want to make sure that you give credit to the author. That's another thing, and that's just good practice to model to our students as well. Julia, this one didn't come in the chat, but some of your slides had an asterisk with the word freemium. Can you talk a little bit about what a freemium is?
Yeah, of course. So on some of our technology resources that I have, I did mention, I did note, there's the asterisk if it's a freemium. And what that means is Parts of the program are free. If you would like all of the program, you might have to pay a fee. So you, for example, in Pear Deck, it's a freemium. You can ask like 3 or 4 different types of questions to your students, but there are additional question types like drag and drop or highlight that you would have to pay for. So that's what those freemium means. Thanks, Sarah.
Another question that came up was, are you recommending at the secondary level recording the mini lesson and playing them during the live class as well instead of teaching live?
So personally, that's what I would do. I think as a team, that's our suggestion as an instructional technology team, but it has to be whatever works best for you. There are a lot of benefits to recording your lesson ahead of time. Again, that classroom management piece is a huge one, I think, especially at the secondary level when you do have virtual learners and in-person learners. This would also help you stay on track, because I know there's been some discussion of, okay, well, I'm going to teach lessons while they're in person, but then when they're home virtually, it's going to be just an assignment or work time. Well, when we're talking about getting through content, that might not be feasible because you're really cutting your week in half. So that would be my recommendation. Again, Sarah and Jenny, please hop in if you disagree. But
the one thing I would add would be that, you may not necessarily be playing the video like for the whole class to watch, like on your screen in front. Like Julia had mentioned, maybe you're working with a small group of students and providing them some more one-on-one support and instruction, and the other students are watching that recorded mini lesson on their own device, kind of more self-paced. So it's going to, vary depending on your content area and what you're doing, but it doesn't, just because you're recording the lesson doesn't mean you're playing it live and everybody just watches it, while they're sitting in their desk staring up at the front screen.
great. Are there any other questions or comments, or if you want to share things that you're thinking about trying with this group that's here today, I'd love to hear that as well. I will stop the recording at this time just in case.